Excuse me, Mr. DJ.
Hey, check this out. We got a great show coming your way.
From the ECSI Sports Studios, it's the Midday Market Report with Jeff Dawson.
Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am your host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and this is your Midday Market Report for Tuesday, January 3rd, 2022. Our weekly trip out to LA with the one and only Mr. Ron as we get caught up in NCAA bowl games, the semifinals, maybe a little peek into the finals. We'll touch on what transpired last night, the implications of what the NFL is going to do, the playoff implications. And as Ron brought up, I was more focused on Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City when I forgot about the fact that the Ravens still have an opportunity to win that division as well. So without further ado, let's bring them in, the one and only Ron from Ron Ace Sports.
Morning, Jeff. How are you doing?
Happy New Year, Ron. It's been a crazy last 12, 16 hours. NFL, Damar Hamlin. As I said this morning, I'll say it again. I was driving home Monday night's bowling night, and I had the phone right there, and I was on Yahoo Sports, and I saw 8-yard completion to T. Higgins, and I went back 2 minutes later. It wasn't updated. Went back 3 minutes later, still not updated. And in my mind, a T. Higgins owner in fantasy football, I'm like, damn it, I bet you T got hurt. And as I'm driving, my producer calls me and goes, hey, Jeff, do you see what the hell's going on here? I'm like, no, I can't. I'm driving, but I assume someone got hurt. He immediately sends me the video, and I get this huge pit in my stomach. And I'm like, oh, my God. I get home, and obviously I was focused there for the next 45 minutes. Will you happen to be watching the game, Ron?
I was watching the game. I saw the hit, and they had one or two replays and then stopped with the replays where he stood up, looked a little dazed, and then fell back down. Just a terrible, unfortunate situation. Reminds us that this is still just a game, and it's for entertainment for us. And I'm just sorry that it happened. The NFL did not rush to a conclusion as far as what to do about it. So glad that they didn't resume the game. Nobody was in position to that. So thankful for the Cincinnati area paramedics and everybody else involved, because time is of the essence when you're trying to administer CPR and so on. Sounds like all the right things were done, and we're hoping for as speedy and a full recovery as possible.
To the millennials that watch our show, I'm going to make two comparisons. Apples to oranges, meaning sports, but me being from Boston, we saw something a little similar to this with Reggie Lewis. He was on the court, and next thing you know, he falls to the ground. And Hank Gathers, Loyola Marymount, the same thing. Again, apples and oranges, two different sports. Obviously not a doctor myself. Don't know if that hit was the cause. Was it the one in a bazillion or what it is? I'm not trying to play paramedic either. What I still see is Josh Allen. I see Stephon Diggs. I see like the shock in their eye. When the ambulance comes rushing out and they hear the broken bones, and we're waiting for the thumbs up, and that was 8-9 minutes of just, as you said, the ESPN just went to a 10-minute commercial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Hank Gathers situation is 2 miles from my house. And my wife was actually on campus at the time of the incident, not at the game, but on campus. And what an unfortunate situation. I know there were other factors that with his medication and so on, but it's just a terrible situation. We know Bo Kimball, his teammate, that team was so close knit, shot free throws left-handed the rest of the way through, including their tremendous upset of Michigan that year in the NCAA tournament. Uh, it's just a terrible situation. And in a basketball game, you're right on the court, and the people who were there at that time, it must have been just a soul-searching moment for them.
I'm going to circle back to the NFL and the implications on potential playoff scenarios and some futures that you were able to cash last Sunday. And I want to get to the NCAAs. The semifinals didn't let us down. Two amazing games. For all the Michigan people that want to play the ref card, I'm sorry, I can't. You give up 2 pick six. Yes, that was a touchdown, Michigan fans. It was, trust me. But they said no. You had it first and goal from the quarter-inch line. If they handed the ball to me, I think I could have found a way in 4 tries to get that. But TCU was not afraid, and it wasn't one of Max's best efforts. That wide receiver, I don't have his name in front of me. Amazing game that he had. Hats off to them. What'd you think before kickoff, and what'd you think after the game?
This is one of those games that I had no bettable opinion on. From the TCU standpoint, they were playing the role of underdog. Sonny Dykes is incredibly efficient in terms of how he devises an offense. Quentin Jefferson, I think that's his name, Quentin Johnson maybe, possible first or second round wide receiver. He was going to be hard to defend. On the other hand, the loss of Blake Corum meant that their bulldozer up the middle was going to, that was going to hurt. But their other running back, Edwards, was a game breaker. It just looked too tough for me to handicap. I agree with you that Michigan can't really use the sour grape card, because when you give up that many yards and that many points, sometimes their defense just has a lapse like it has in big games before. It was theirs for the taking. It didn't happen. TCU ran all over them, passed all over them. It was an entertaining game. Yeah, I will say that. Can TCU put it together one more time? I'm not sure, but I know that was a big moment for TCU, who had a snub of getting into the playoffs about a decade previously, and now they're not only in, but one win away from a magical Butler NCAA basketball type season.
Yeah, preseason 200-1, and I haven't seen anyone come on social media. We usually see them by now. Prop swap, come get this 200-1 ticket there. Opened 13.5-point dogs with a 62. I'm seeing some 12.5s with a 62.5, 63 going back and forth there. The second game, I had said all along, Ohio State's got a second life now. Georgia defensively loves to play man-to-man, and they hadn't seen wide receivers like what they saw this past couple of days here. I'm losing track of days here. Saturday, Sunday, whatever the Saturday. So you add Marvin Harrison Jr., an offensive line that not just kept Stroud upright, just cool, calm, collected, wasn't afraid at all, and was like a surgeon. And I was bringing back the Georgia quarterback with Bennett when he threw that pick, and then right before the half, almost threw another one. The coach grabs him, take a knee. He had the yips in my eyes. He was like, didn't want to get rid of it in that third quarter. An amazing game. We had the team total Georgia over, which was a sweat. Don't get me wrong, was a sweat. We got there. The 27.5 team total from Ohio State blows by it. But what'd you think before the kickoff, and what'd you think after the final dust settled?
Well, I think we talked about this 2 or 3 weeks before. You asked me my opinion, and I said I have no choice but to take Ohio State plus the 7 at the time. It was trending between 6.5 and 7, but it was 7 minus 110. They had all the metric characteristics. They were a power number in my eyes. In my eyes, the line should have been set closer to 4, not 7. The only thing, out of respect to Georgia, it was not one of my top plays. It was just a regular play because I respected Georgia and their program. During the game and after the game, I would say Ohio State was a better team. If Marvin Harrison doesn't go down, Ohio State wins the game. Now, they couldn't get a stop at the end because Georgia's been there before, and teams that have been there before, they just find ways to win. You see that in all kinds of sports, NCAA, NFL, and outside of football as well. Georgia knows how to pull out these games. But Ohio State was the better team on that day, and I think the game played out pretty much the way I thought it would.
I talked about the opening numbers. I'm going to just say 1362.5. My thought process very simply is this. We talked about, if you like Georgia before this tournament started, go grab them minus the 130. Most people thought they'd be facing Michigan. Now you get a TCU at 12.5, 13. It's almost TCU plus 370 or somewhere around there. Georgia around 5-1 to win this game. My initial thought process is the speed of Georgia, the fact that they got the world off their shoulders. I'm not saying TCU can't compete, but I think this TCU defense will have a hard time stopping Georgia. So I have already said Georgia team total 37.5. I got them scoring in the 40s. I don't know what your thoughts are there, Ron.
Well, first of all, every day's been just keeping up with writing 41 bowl reports, getting ready for the NFL, and so on. So I haven't exactly done all the work I need to do on this game. Actually, not even close. Slept in today, which was a blessing as well. But I will say this. I have my power numbers. I have my rush numbers. And I have something else there. Rush data, point data, everything. And I'm pretty much right now completely on the sidelines. My numbers tell me this should be a 12-point game. My rush numbers tell me it should be about a 14-point game. I haven't updated the rush numbers. It might go down a little to 12.5, 13. My point numbers tell me about a 12.5, 13. Everything sits exactly on the numbers, which is thrilling because I'll sit back, look at some props, take it easy, and so on. At this moment, I would say there's a 5% chance I'll have a play, but when I do a deeper dive and write up the game, things could change. But right now, it is so properly priced that I don't have an initial opinion.
Bowl season over, other than TC Georgia and South Dakota State, North Dakota State, which right now is sitting on 5. South Dakota State favored there. 4 games yesterday. The Alabama sour grapes, unfortunately, no one here said that they weren't a top 4 team. No one here has said, that they didn't deserve not to be in the Final Four. Unfortunately, they had 2 losses, and so they weren't in the Final Four. But run down how the bowls went for you, how they did on New Year's Day yesterday. I know you're breathing a lot easier. I'm assessing that the bankroll looks pretty good. What do you say?
Yeah, I don't know how to describe it other than that, even though there weren't any unlucky wins or losses, because I wasn't really involved in some of those weird finishes and stuff like that. I don't know how you have the record that I have and think that that's possible every year. Last year, Las Vegas, Chris and I kind of had a running contest as who kept winning games, who would get to 90%. I think I beat them by half a game, 19-2 versus 18-2. Wow. So I said, that's not going to happen again. Just the same way I said at Oregon State when they won the NCAA baseball championship, I said, that will never happen again. And it happened the very next year, and it happened again after that. I said, what? And here I sit, 19-2 again. Wow. So it's been incredible. I had a lot of low volume plays early. I didn't see a lot of edges. I was worried about the opt-outs. I second guessed myself by saying I got to put a small number. And then the big plays were hitting. I got lucky in one sense because I misjudged the Pittsburgh UCLA line. I took 7 and then I took 6 because I thought the line was going to go down to 3. I thought UCLA would have opt-outs. They didn't have opt-outs. Instead, Pitt lost their leading runner, which was, to me, he was programmed by me. I run simulations on these games to run 175 yards in the game. And then I couldn't get off it because the line went to 8.5 or whatever. And I said, oh, what the hell, I'll keep it. And then they win outright. So I get the Pitt, I get the Notre Dame. We talked about that game a couple of weeks ago. Tennessee against Clemson. Iowa, predicting a defensive touchdown to me was easy. The defense often outscores the offense. The only thing I'm mad about is that they didn't get the safety, because I thought they would get a safety. Alabama, when they were -3, there was 9 points of value against Kansas State. That was good. And I'm wearing the Penn State hat, as you can see, in honor of the Penn State-Utah game, which did adjust at the end. It sat at 3 for about 10 days. You could get Penn State +3. That was the incorrect line. The correct line should have been 1.5 to Penn State, and it closed about 1.5. But it took a long, long time to get there. Penn State lost 2 games all year, to Michigan and to Ohio State, and they won by double digits in every other game. And I thought they were being undervalued in this game. I really can't complain. I don't know how it happened. I run the metrics. I run the power numbers, which are efficient. The rush data is very efficient in bowl games. I have some stats that have held up over 20 years, but typically they don't lead to this kind of record. I just feel lucky.
Well, that's 2 years in a row. So I'm going to have to say, when we run our show back next year, we might have to have you put together a bowl guide and start, maybe selling it on the sides. And it'll be the guys at the casino that don't want to see that.
I do write it up. Last year, I actually sent it to more people than I ever did. I usually send it to 5 to 8 people. There were people asking for it, and I gave it to them in blocks of 8 because the holidays are tough. There's a lot going on. And if I was only doing NCAA, it would be easier, but I do NFL and stuff. So some of the games I'm writing up 36 to 48 hours before the game is even being played. And then I'm running the simulation program 24 hours before. So even though I formed an opinion and I have some plays in already, I haven't honed in and I haven't finished the writing until the last minute. And sometimes that's good because of the opt-outs and stuff. You get these days, you want to wait for late information. So it's a frantic push in December. This year I sent it out to maybe 5 or 6 people total before it went out. But I've written up all 41 bowls and it worked out. What can I say? Next year, maybe it'll be 15 and 16 or something. I don't know. But I just do what I do, and I'm very methodical. I trust the process. I say that on every show. I don't deviate. I don't cut corners. I just do what I do and trust what I'm doing. And it's not always going to work this way. I'm going to have losing streaks. Everybody has losing streaks.
Trusting the process. I preach that every day. It's so nice to hear someone else say that, because that word deviation, cutting corners, and that's what most people do. I mean, why walk a mile when I can, go around this corner and around that side street? And, cutting corners never worked for me, and I'm glad to hear it on your side. Let's go back to the NFL. You got a full slate pending right now in the NFL. A lot of implications. Take us through what you're seeing for the NFL. I know it's only Tuesday. We're not asking, for any leans. There's teams must win and in. Obviously, the Patriots are one of them. There's a couple others. The winner of the Green Bay Detroit there. But what are you seeing so far in the NFL, Ron?
Well, I'm in the midst of writing up my Week 18 article. I should finish it tomorrow. I've just started it. And what I do with that article is I go through all the scenarios. I take a game and I say, what's at stake for each team? What do the metrics look like? What are the situations? And there's a lot of Week 18 situations. Just because you're a win and in doesn't mean you're going to cover the point spread. Because teams that are out of the playoffs, especially since Week 18 is division versus division, so you get most of the teams trying because it's division against division. To that end, you get some inflated lines. The power ratings are less useful because the odds are all over the place. place. They don't match the power ratings in week 18, but you can find some value with teams out of the playoffs. So my assessment is how to deal with that. The one thing that's different this year is that, or it's been different all year, is that we have so many brand new quarterbacks quarterbacking in week 18. Joshua Dobbs, his second game. Jared Stidham, his second game. The NFL is a war of attrition, and I have to assess somehow how they're going to do in their second ever NFL game versus a team that's playoff bound. Kansas City is playoff bound. Vegas plays them. And the Jacksonville, Tennessee is winning in, losing out. So I'm going through all those scenarios. I'm looking at all the situations. The one thing I will say, just to give kind of one idea of one play that I am doing, I haven't written the game up yet, so it's not, I don't know the intensity, but I like Denver against the Chargers. And I particularly would like them in the second half, because if the Chargers are locked in, just like the Giants are locked in, they know they're a particular seed, nothing can happen. They might play on a Saturday next week. They might play on a Sunday. We don't know. So it might be short rest. I don't see either team having their starters in the second half of those games. Now, if you have access to an early third quarter line, fourth quarter line, that's a typical approach that I do at the beginning of week 18. I might take one team that's trying, or at least will have their starters play like a glorified week 3 exhibition game for the first quarter. But then I'll reverse pivot. And in this case, I would take a Denver team in the third quarter and the fourth quarter when I presume that Justin Herbert is not playing and a lot of the starters will not play. Same for the New York Giants. That's the strategy I would use.
I'm looking at the slate. Obviously, as you said, there's 2 Saturday games, Tennessee and Jacksonville. The 2 teams going in entirely different directions. And as you said, Dobbs will get his second start. Jacksonville win and in 6.5 and a 40 right now. Looks like the consensus. I was kind of surprised this morning, Ron. Kansas City and Vegas is the second game. I had a 9.5 and a 52 before the numbers were released. Came in this morning and seeing 7.5s across the board. I'm trying. There's no info on my spreadsheet stating why. I don't think the sharps came pounding in. Is there a reason for maybe a 1.5 drop in that game on Tuesday?
My issue with this game is I have a very tough time with new quarterbacks that haven't played in the NFL or haven't played much, setting a power number on their team. It's kind of a guess. I wrote that I usually suspend my power numbers on a team when a quarterback until a new quarterback has played 2 games, and we're not going to have that luxury in either game because in this particular case, Denham, he'll be playing his second game this year. So it's kind of a set in pencil. I would have set the line closer to 7 to begin with, so I'm not surprised at the 9.5 going to 7.5. If and this is the crazy situation that's going on in the NFL. If the if the Buffalo game against Cincinnati never gets played, it's a whole different situation because then Kansas City wins, they're automatically the number 1 seed. So if that happens, I think you'll see the Kansas City line shoot up again to 9.5 and 10 because they completely control their own destiny, where Buffalo right now would control their own destiny for the number 1 seed and the coveted playoff bye. So more to be determined about where that spread ends up, depending on the NFL decision on the Buffalo-Cincinnati game.
So we're down to the final week. Take us through your futures, your over-unders. I assume most have been graded, most probably on the W side. Another big year for you. How'd the season end, and is there any left hanging on the branches for week 18?
Well, I'm pleased again. 10-4 out of the 15 plays so far for the ones I made before the season. I lost with Atlanta this past week to make the 4th loss. I have 1 pending play, and half of my play is Washington under 8.5, which is already a winner. So it's either going to be 10.5 and 4 or 10.5 and or 11 and 4, because the other half is Washington at under 8. I bet them both at under 8.5 and under 8. I had a limit as far as under 8.5, where I would have done it all at 8.5, but I couldn't bet anymore on it. So that's the way it went. So that worked out pretty well in terms of that. There are still some things to be decided, and not a lot of my in-season bets. A lot of them have already won. San Francisco to win the division as soon as Trey Lance went out, because Jimmy G was the more stabilizing force. Cincinnati to make the playoffs, because I saw that I had underestimated the difficulty of their schedule, and maybe underestimated Joe Burrow, which I'll never do again because he's that good. So I have both Baltimore and Cincinnati to win the division. So I'm in good shape. Cincinnati plus 225, Baltimore plus 240, and plus 225. I would prefer Baltimore because I'm heavier on Baltimore, but either way, it's going to be okay. Do I have anything else? It's really crazy. It's really quiet in terms of what else I might have, because Washington's been eliminated. I honestly don't think I have much to worry about in terms of that. It's really just, is Washington a winner or a tie? Who wins the Baltimore Cincinnati division? Off the top of my head, I cannot think of anything else that I have pending.
We're assuming, and the number set at 14, Eagles, that is 14-point favorites over the Giants. Giants are in the playoffs. Eagles looking for that 1 seed. And the number of 14 tells me that Mr. Jalen Hurts will be ready this week to make sure they get that number 1 seed. If that's the case, Dallas will then be traveling to Tom and the Bucks. Now the two guys that we just can't, it's like that scab that keeps coming back. Rodgers and Brady. Brady throws for over 400. Evans catches 3 touchdowns. They're back to that team that won the Super Bowl, and in comes Dak and company. And I know I'm getting a week ahead of myself here, but is that how you see it? As in other words, Eagles will win this week. Eagles will get the number 1 seed, and you can see Dallas travel into Tampa the following week to square off in the playoffs.
That's most likely the case. I think the Eagles will put forth a great defensive effort. It's a real dilemma with Jalen Hurts because we don't know how healthy he is. Just like a Lamar Jackson, although we went through this last year and they said he might play, and then he didn't play. That's the fragility, if there's such a word, of Lamar Jackson and his body. But with Jalen Hurts, I know he wants to play. It's probably, if he can, he should play, because if they get the bye, that's another 2 weeks, and you don't want him rusty for the first week of the playoffs because they would have that playoff bye. I would play him, hope they get up to a comfortable lead, and then sit him in the third and fourth quarter just to give him some action if they can. So I think if I'm the coach of Philadelphia, I'm saying, defense, do your job this week. You have to stuff the run. You haven't always stuffed the run. A lot of teams don't want to run on Philly, but that's the way to go. You can actually run on them. Yards per carry is high. But I would think that's what would happen, which would relegate Dallas to playing at Tampa. And then it becomes the Mike McCarthy show. We know Dallas is a better team than Tampa. We know Tom Brady has been out of rhythm 55 minutes of every game. But every time you give him 5 minutes, he tells you that he's the greatest quarterback that's ever played the game. So you don't want to give him the 5 minutes. So Mike McCarthy, step out of the way, let your team do your job. And unfortunately, you have to handicap coaches, or maybe fortunately, because there's no reason for me to do any work on the game, but I would suspect that even if I think Dallas is a better team, then I'm not going to take them as a road favorite.
I had heard initially, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that Dallas would be -6 at Tampa, which to me is a little high there. I see, as you said, with Mike McCarthy, Dak, playoff road game. I'll set it at Dallas -4.5. Where do you have it?
I would probably agree with that. Off the top of my head, I would say 5.
Okay.
It depends what you want to give home field advantage for playoffs. Do you give more than a point and a quarter for playoffs? Do you give them an extra ½ a point? And a lot of it depends on when the game is played, how much rest, how much effort was exerted the previous week. There are a lot of variables. Either way, you're not going to change your home field advantage more than maybe 3/4 of a point. But I'm weighing a lot of situational factors in this game. If Dallas plays at Tampa on a Saturday, that means they would have been road this Sunday and road next Saturday. How much effort did they have to give against Washington, and so on and so forth? So I have a lot of factors to weigh, and I encourage other people to weigh a lot of factors. Game placement will matter.
Yeah, 2 years ago, Tom took the show on the road at Washington, at the Saints, and then at Green Bay. Then the Super Bowl was in Tampa, so we got his home game against the Chiefs. Last year, the home wasn't that good for them, where the Rams came in and steamrolled them early. Good battle back, but the Rams took care of business there. It's definitely going to be interesting when you put those two scenarios together there. We've talked a lot, Ron, about the 49ers, defense getting healthy, and the Brock Star. I mean, I'm waiting for that hiccup. We haven't seen that hiccup. Uh, right now, is that your team coming out of the NFC just on your power rankings, or do we still have to wait and see? I'm still assuming Philly will be the 1 seed.
Yeah, I think it's really close between San Francisco and Philly. I can't put anything between them right now. If San Francisco has to go to Philly, Kyle Shanahan said, and I agree with him, it was good for the team and for his quarterback to face adversity this past week, where he had to come from behind, where everything wasn't so easy, that the defense wasn't dominating, and they had double-digit leads. And that was another feather in his cap in terms of his resume. And we know Purdy had some big games in college as well. So I think the situation won't be so big for him. I think it's a dead heat between San Francisco and Philadelphia. I don't think anything's clear cut right now. There's no runaway team in the NFL, much like last year where there were a lot of upsets and an amazing wild card playoff. All the playoffs last year came down to flip a coin. It was that close. And I wouldn't be surprised, because there's a logjam on the AFC and these two in the NFC, if we didn't have another exciting flip a coin. So I think it's hard to anoint a favorite. Stay healthy, execute your game plan. Taking 3 or more points in playoff situations might be, one strategy if you truly believe that these games are going to come down to the wire.
As we close here, I like to give you the stage for a closing thought, maybe a subject or topic that is falling on deaf ears, that maybe we could get across to certain people or certain businesses, or anything that you foresee in the next week before we potentially meet again.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about this hopefully a little bit more when Chris and I do our show, Las Vegas Chris, in a few minutes. But I think if the NFL is really about player safety, there is a solution to the scheduling problem. In order to make teams like Baltimore, Kansas City, everybody as whole as possible, and I know it's furthest from everybody's mind right now, and I agree completely. You have 2 weeks between the Super Bowl, the AFC NFC Championship game, and the Super Bowl. In the past, we've had situations where it's only been 1 week between the two. I would do the same exact thing this year. I would move the playoffs back 1 week, either for one conference or both conferences. And we would have 1 week between the AFC NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. Play this week as scheduled, and then the first week, which would normally be playoff weekend, wild card weekend with everybody but the number 1 seed, play the Buffalo-Cincinnati game. It's a standalone one game. If you want, you can make the NFC playoffs that week, and you can put the 3 games in the NFC that week, and then those guys can have the bye the following week. They would all catch up in the semis and then the finals. Or you just have an unbelievably important standalone game that the NFL would have all eyes on with Baltimore, Cincinnati. if player safety really matters, why not give all teams an extra week before the start of the playoffs? We're giving them an extra week before the start of the regular season for no reason at all right now, because nobody plays week 3 in preseason. But everybody's dead tired right now. Why not give them an extra week beforehand? I think if you move the playoffs back 1 week, it would be an ideal situation. Television would adjust. There'd still be games every week, and including the week before the Super Bowl. Just my 2 cents.
And I agree. I like the thought process. I thought I was getting a little creative with the, if they needed to, they could have played tomorrow night and then moved the Sunday games to 2 standalones on Monday. Then I had a colleague say to me, well, the NFL doesn't want to go against the NCAA championship game, which I said, yeah, maybe you're right there. But safety is definitely a topic. We witnessed week 4, I think it was, with the Tua and him on the ground, and we thought we were making strides with the concussion protocol. Well, what happened yesterday, no one was ready for, no one will ever be ready for. So it will definitely be interesting there. Ron, I can't thank you enough. I know your season's coming to an end. I know the NFL playoffs is starting. We are always here on Tuesday at 3:30. If you want to come on and talk playoffs, if you want to take the month of January off because you got a busy February of writing, we understand that. We just want to make sure that you know 2 things. Number one, we can't thank you enough for 2022. And look forward to, God willing, 2023. Yourself, Vegas, Chris, whoever wants to come on board, we're here, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for this platform. I've just really enjoyed sharing the process and everything. My career is winding down. It's been a wonderful career. Do some downsizing starting next year in the NCAA, but certainly enjoy talking football. Certainly feel like it's so much fun to handicap and to write about it, and to try to be right about everything that's going on, and to understand when you're wrong, what happened, and so on. But it's been a lot of fun, so I thank you.
If you're not following, please follow him at Ron A Sports on Twitter. He does follow back, and guess what, guys? He does answer questions if you ask them. Don't be shy. He's got another show coming up. So with that, I want everyone to stay tuned around 4:30, 4:35, 4:40. I'm going to get back with Riley. We're going to talk some closing bell, get everyone caught up to speed, what's going on in today's market. But for myself, Jeff Dawson at DC Sports Invest, from Ron at Ron A Sports, we wish everyone a blessed afternoon and stay tuned.